We're often told that to build massive wealth, you need a brilliant, spotless, world-changing idea, a perfectly engineered machine. But in the real world, relying on absolute perfection usually means your system eventually grinds to a halt. Look closely at people who quietly wake up to fresh money in their accounts every morning. They don't have massive inheritances or genius tech patents. They build lasting income by actively chasing the exact mundane opportunities that most people's egos reject. This chart outlines the economic principle of the moat of discomfort. Unpleasantness acts as an invisible shield against competition. A lucrative core is protected by three distinct layers: physical barriers, spatial barriers, and the barrier of pure tedium. If you want to find high-margin wealth with almost zero serious competition, you have to bypass the glamour. You have to look exactly where your pride tells you not to. Let's start with a physical barrier. Think about someone dangling from a harness halfway up a skyscraper. It looks terrifying, and that fear immediately eliminates 99% of potential entrepreneurs. But look at the numbers. Commercial window cleaning contracts for hospitals and office buildings pay between $400 and $1,000 a single workday, and those contracts often renew automatically every January. An operator managing 3 two-person crews can pull in $300,000 a year without ever strapping on a harness. They simply pay trained workers well and keep the difference between the client's payment and the crew's wages. If fear works well as a barrier, disgust works even better. A business like portable restroom rentals is profoundly unappealing, which is exactly why the global market for it is projected to cross $34 billion by 2030. Every construction site and outdoor event is legally required to have these units, but absolutely nobody wants to own them. You buy the inventory, rent it out by the event, and run scheduled cleaning routes. You collect payment every time a unit is in use. The discomfort isn't a downside. The uglier a service is to perform, the fewer people will ever try to compete against you for those contracts. We can shift from physical repulsion to spatial advantage. These machines serve as automated, unstaffed storefronts, monetizing the empty hallways of gyms and the quiet corners of office buildings. The core of the business is acquiring spatial permission. You are taking a dead square of floor space that was previously worth $0 a month and putting it to work. Once installed, a well-placed machine generates between $300 and $1,000 in net profit every month. The revenue is dictated entirely by foot traffic, requiring absolutely zero salesmanship from the owner. This spatial advantage compounds when you introduce independent ATM networks. You place cash machines in heavy traffic locations like laundromats and bars, extracting a fee every time someone makes a withdrawal. This diagram shows the power of spatial real estate. If an owner allows a vending machine, they'll likely accept an ATM next to it. You instantly convert a single location into 2 income streams, doubling your yield on the exact same route. Success in this mode comes down to identifying completely ignored square footage and transforming it into a system that collects rent 24 hours a day. The final barrier is invisible: administrative boredom. Look at the crushing weight of keeping ledgers and files organized. Every small business owner has to deal with paperwork, and almost all of them deeply resent it. That resentment creates immense demand for services like independent bookkeeping and commercial cleaning. These operations exist entirely to absorb the mundane chores that owners refuse to do themselves. These service businesses share a specific mathematical advantage. The tasks must be completed on a continuous loop, creating highly predictable, recurring revenue. This graph illustrates why the model is so effective. If you constantly have to hunt for one-off jobs, your growth stays flat. But a single client paying for a mundane task every week for a year compounds immediately, stripping away the anxiety of finding new customers. That recurrence makes scaling straightforward. A solo operator with 5 cleaning clients can make up to $8,000 a month. But by managing a simple 4-person crew on those recurring routes, that number jumps to $40,000 a month, with profit margins between 35% and 50%. The boredom of the task is the primary asset. By taking on tedious chores that others despise, you secure a reliable, long-term flow of cash. Real passive wealth is an operational system, a network of rentals, routes, and recurring contracts that functions independently of your own physical labor. It is the result of identifying a problem, be it heights, waste, or paperwork, and building a machine to solve it repeatedly while you are elsewhere. The desire to launch something glamorous or universally admired is likely the exact obstacle keeping you from financial independence. The ego demands applause, but the market rewards utility. Dirty sidewalks, portable restrooms, and tedious spreadsheets are the blueprints for building real, unglamorous wealth. They are the opportunities that others are too proud to take. Every week, a new viral app promises to change the world, and every week, a hyped-up fusion restaurant quietly shuts its doors. We are obsessed with innovation, but the cost of chasing brilliance is a high failure rate. But if you look away from Silicon Valley and toward the mundane corners of your neighborhood, you find a massive statistical anomaly. Take the standard coin-operated laundromat. It generates no press and requires zero venture capital, yet it commands a quiet financial dominance. This chart shows the 5-year survival rates of new businesses. On the left, laundromats hold steady at an astounding 95%. Compare that to the standard restaurant survival curve on the right, which plummets within the first few years. The reason they survive is their financial mechanics. These locations average up to 35% net profit margins. As this pie chart shows, revenue flows from several directions at once. Beyond the washers and dryers, a single location effectively operates multiple small businesses under one roof, capturing cash from beverage vending, ATMs, and paid Wi-Fi while customers wait. This is the anti-startup blueprint. It is a category of enterprise that secures long-term wealth specifically by being deliberately unglamorous. By refusing to reinvent the wheel, these operators entirely avoid the expensive burden of constant innovation. The secret to outlasting the competition is abandoning the need to persuade the market. Instead of convincing people to buy a clever new product, you simply position yourself in front of a baseline need they cannot avoid. Look behind any major commercial building, and you will find the unglamorous environments where unavoidable problems quietly thrive. Cockroaches don't care if you want to think about them. This creates a powerful economic engine called compelled recurrence, and the pest control industry is its perfect model. Look at this line graph tracking the global pest control market. In 2023, the industry was valued at $22.6 billion. By 2030, that line is projected to hit $34.3 billion. That massive growth comes down to a shift in negotiating power. When you sell a standard product, you have to convince the buyer. But when a restaurant discovers a pest issue, the client comes to you, urgently needing solutions, and they happily pay whatever you ask. The cost of inaction is too severe. A single health code violation can shut a business down permanently. Because that risk is always looming, a pest control service enjoys automatic monthly contract renewals, without their team ever having to make an additional sales pitch. True financial stability happens when the client's fear of a problem forces them to relentlessly pursue the business. You never have to spend a dime on marketing when your customer is terrified of what happens if they stop paying you. That same dynamic applies to the physical footprint of the modern economy. Across the country, massive grids of domestic storage facilities are quietly eating up square footage in almost every city. The scale here is staggering. The self-storage market is currently valued at over $45 billion, with more than 50,000 active facilities operating in the United States alone. The economic reality driving this expansion has shifted. Small e-commerce sellers now represent the fastest-growing customer segment, using these units as makeshift warehouses to store inventory without the high overhead of a full commercial lease. This reveals a second powerful strategy: capital absorption. We see the exact same logic playing out every single day in the heavy industrial equipment rental market. This flowchart illustrates the mechanic. An operator absorbs the upfront cost of an expensive physical asset, renting it out to specialized contractors for short projects. Once the asset pays for itself, every subsequent rental generated by that machine becomes entirely pure profit. These operators do not sell consumer products. They sell temporary access to silent infrastructure. By absorbing the heavy upfront costs, they solve spatial and capital bottlenecks for other entrepreneurs. You can apply this exact strategy on a microscopic scale, right down to the tiny physical components that literally hold daily operations together. There is deep profitability in manufacturing highly specific, unglamorous parts like custom screws or specialized plastic connectors. Massive factories absolutely refuse to halt their giant production lines to fulfill a small custom order, leaving a massive gap for a small manufacturer to step in and secure millions in revenue. We see this same logic of repeatable classification in the sports card reselling market. By stripping away the speculative hobby aspect and treating it as a high-volume, disciplined process of identifying, grading their physical condition, and pricing bulk lots, an operator turns tedious manual labor into a highly lucrative enterprise. The digital space behaves identically. Instead of trying to build the next social network, independent developers are making steady money building niche management software, like appointment scheduling systems specifically designed for electricians. These micro-niche business owners are usually already paying a monthly fee for a mediocre tool. They aren't looking for a brilliant piece of software architecture. They just want a daily operational annoyance to disappear from their plate. Corporate giants consistently leave highly profitable gaps in the market. They walk away simply because the required solutions are too small, too tedious, or too highly specific to justify the attention of a massive enterprise. To generate reliable wealth, we have to redefine the word boring. It does not mean formal, and it does not mean serious. It means building a process that is highly repeatable and aggressively unglamorous. If you want to spot these opportunities, start with this checklist. First, automate the annoyance. Identify a deeply persistent, daily operational task that people actively hate doing, and take it off their hands. Second, absorb the bottleneck. Locate an expensive physical barrier, whether that is a lack of commercial space or the prohibitive cost of industrial equipment, and absorb that cost so small contractors don't have to. Finally, cure an existing headache. Look for mundane operational problems that business owners are already actively paying money to solve poorly. Chasing brilliant innovation often leads to high risk and heavy debt. By contrast, those who focus on systematically curing mundane, everyday headaches build a foundation for a resilient, long-term enterprise.
Today, we're going to challenge a massive cultural obsession that I think pretty much all of us grew up with. I'm talking about the myth of the high-risk garage startup. You know the exact stories I mean, right? The lone genius who invents some world-changing app in their basement, goes totally viral, and boom, they're a billionaire overnight. And hey, it's incredibly exciting, it's flashy, and it makes for absolutely great movies. But if we take a step back and actually look at the data on how sustained wealth is actually generated, those stories are extreme outliers. So today, we're going to completely rethink our financial strategy. We're going to look at the quiet, honestly kind of unglamorous models that are actually minting millionaires right in plain sight. So, to get us started, I want to pose a really pivotal question right out of the gate. What actually builds true wealth? Is it the brilliant one-in-a-million genius idea, or is it boring execution? We really need to shift our perspective right here, right now, to a pure investor's lens, because through that lens, wealth really isn't about flashy innovation or going viral or constantly trying to reinvent the wheel. It is fundamentally about reliable, predictable cash flow. It's about taking old ideas and executing them better than anyone else, with a level of consistency that frankly most people just don't have the patience to maintain. Section 1. Specializing in essential trades. You absolutely do not need to invent a brand new industry to make incredible money. Just look at this premium rate, $250 per hour. Now take traditional electricians. They've always charged pretty decently for regular maintenance, right? But recently, a massive shift happened. With the sudden boom of smart homes and electric vehicle charging stations, this old-school trade completely transformed into a highly lucrative specialization. An electrician who specializes in installing EV charging stations and smart home systems can easily command this premium rate, which is just vastly higher than what they'd get for traditional electrical work. And why is that? Well, because right now, more and more homeowners are installing EV chargers in their garages, but most traditional electricians haven't actually pivoted to specialize in this yet. So whoever simply arrives in this niche first over the next few years gets to charge premium rates, literally just for getting there before the broader competition. The trade itself is exactly the same. The specialization is what changed the game.
So, the crucial, absolute bottom line point here is this. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just point it in a direction nobody else is looking. This is a core strategic takeaway. And honestly, we're going to see it repeated throughout this whole explainer. You really don't have to be some tech visionary. Now let's see how this exact same logic applies to another trade, which brings us to a phenomenal, real-world example of a plumber in Perth who built a seven-figure business.
Let's compare the traditional path to the specialized one. I mean, everyone jokes about a plumber's rates until, a bathroom floods at 2 a.m. A standard general plumber who combines regular maintenance with those late-night emergencies can make a genuinely great living, typically bringing in between $150,000 to $300,000 annually. But this Perth plumber, he took a totally different route. He decided to focus exclusively on commercial kitchen maintenance for restaurants. Think about it for a second. A busy restaurant literally cannot wait a week for a broken pipe to get fixed. Their entire operation just grinds to a halt. They need it resolved right that second. And because of that, they are more than willing to pay premium rates for that urgency. By deciding to compete for only one very specific type of client, he completely stopped competing for everyone else. He essentially eliminated price competition because he made himself entirely irreplaceable to those restaurants. And when you're irreplaceable, you dictate the terms.
Section 2. Location and proven systems.
Now, we're transitioning from specialized trades to physical assets. And honestly, industry reports often call this the most boring business of all, parking lots in high-demand business districts. Get this, an operator managing just 5 small parking lots in a commercial area can bring in $600,000 a year, and it is almost completely passive. There is no product to sell, there's no inventory to restock, and you literally never have to pretend the customer is always right, mainly because your only employee is a boom gate. It is, quite literally, making money from empty land. What makes this so unbelievably powerful from an investor's perspective is that this business doesn't compete on innovation. It doesn't compete on marketing or customer service. It competes solely on location. And location, unlike some clever business idea, cannot be copied overnight. Whoever secures that right corner lot first keeps an uncopyable advantage forever.
Another proven system we have to talk about is the established service franchise. Now, full transparency, this does require significant upfront capital. You're looking at an average of around $275,000 just to start, usually with about an 18-month timeline to profitability. But check out the average annual revenue, over $1 million. Franchises represent 10% of U.S. businesses and make up a massive 3% of the country's entire GDP. That McDonald's you drive past every day, it isn't owned by some faceless corporation, it's owned by an ordinary person who bought into a proven model. See, when you buy a franchise, you aren't really buying a brand. What you are actually buying is an instruction manual. Somebody else has already spent years making all the painful mistakes, fine-tuning the daily processes, and rigorously testing the market. You simply show up and execute their proven system. And that dramatically, I mean drastically, reduces your overall risk compared to inventing something out of thin air.
Which brings us to a total paradigm shift. Section 3. Buying existing cash flow.
Author Walker Deibel perfectly anchors this whole argument. He says, buying an existing business with proven cash flow is typically a faster, less risky path to financial freedom than starting from zero. And he hits the nail right on the head. Buying money that is already flowing completely changes your risk equation as an investor. Think about it. When you start from absolute zero, the biggest, scariest risk is that terrifying period where you literally do not know if your idea is going to work or if anyone even wants to buy what you're selling. But when you buy a boring business that is already up and running, one with existing customers and proven cash flow, you entirely bypass that whole phase of uncertainty.
Because here's the reality. Not all income is created equal. The market values these businesses entirely differently. A business that's highly dependent on one-time sales typically sells for just 1 to 2 times its annual income. However, a business built on recurring revenue, that tends to sell for 3 to 5 times its annual income. The market is happily paying a massive premium for predictable consistency. And that leads us directly to the absolute most important principle of this entire explainer.
Section 4. The reoccurring revenue principle.
Let's break this down with a really simple analogy. The true secret behind every single boring, highly profitable business we've discussed today isn't the specific industry itself. Nope, it is the invisible structure beneath it all. Consistent, repeating cash flow. The difference between getting rich slowly and never getting rich at all really comes down to this. If you sell a popsicle, you earn once. But if you rent out the popsicle cart to someone else every single month, you earn every month without ever having to sell another popsicle yourself. The customer pays, they leave, and then they come right back to pay again the following month without you having to spend a single dime to convince them all over again. This is the exact same invisible structure shared by the local laundromat, the storage unit facility, a monthly bookkeeping service, or even an ATM. You are basically setting up a system that just earns every single month.
Morgan Housel perfectly captures this required mindset shift. He writes, people underestimate the power of simple things that repeat consistently because they chase excitement instead of consistency. And isn't that so true? We are incredibly wired to look for the thrill of the new, the genius idea, the exciting disruptive startup. But real, long-term wealth, the kind that doesn't rely on sheer luck, is built right on the bedrock of boring consistency. Literally, none of these businesses are brilliant, but all of them, every single one, are consistent.
So here is your ultimate pivotal filter.
The very next time you evaluate any business idea, whether it's one from this explainer or something you dream up yourself, ask yourself this one question first. Does it pay you once or does it pay you every month? Just applying that single question is going to immediately eliminate like 90% of those bad, high-effort, low-reward business ideas, and it's going to leave you only with the models that are actually capable of building long-term wealth.
Section 5. Chasing excitement versus consistency. To really wrap our heads around this, let's look at a real-world story to see how this plays out for two 34-year-olds, Daniel and Alex.
Now, Daniel wanted the genius idea. He spent 2 whole years frantically searching for a completely unique app, a product nobody else was doing. He burned through his savings on all these chaotic attempts that just never took off. Today, at 41, he's still employed, still searching, and honestly feeling like time is rapidly running out. But then we have Alex. Alex chose the boring execution. Instead of chasing the next big thing, he calmly bought a small, totally unglamorous laundromat that had already been successfully running in his city for 15 years. He didn't invent it, he just bought proven cash flow. And then, while he was paying off the loan, he systematically added 2 vending machines at a nearby gym. Within 4 years, that combined recurring cash flow allowed him to leave his day job and completely retire. Today, his money just comes in while he sleeps.
Now, the difference between Daniel and Alex wasn't intelligence, it wasn't starting capital, and it definitely wasn't effort. Daniel worked incredibly hard. But Daniel failed because he actively chose to compete on a playing field where thousands of ambitious people exactly like him were competing at the exact same time. Every unique tech idea he ever had was basically competing against 1,000 others. Alex, on the other hand, chose a boring field that almost nobody else wanted to step onto, and that meant he essentially had the entire playing field all to himself.
Which leaves us with this final, somewhat provocative thought for you to take away. Are you exhausting yourself competing on a playing field everyone wants? Or are you building wealth where nobody is looking? True financial freedom usually doesn't come from some flashy eureka moment. It really comes from buying the laundromat, renting out the parking lot, or specializing in the essential trade. If this explainer opened your eyes to a brand new way of looking at business strategy and wealth creation, make sure to subscribe so we can keep analyzing the real systems behind financial success together.